Welcome back to Whovo Review. We are discussing this week The Girl Who Died. I'm your host, Farrar, and I am back with two of my usual cohorts and a new cohort. Lewis is here.
Hi there.
Paul is here.
Hi.
And Allie is here.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome aboard. Well, some people were calling this episode The Plot That Died. There were a lot of things that people liked about this episode, and there were also things that people didn't like about this episode. A lot of those were the exact same thing. The God in the Clouds, which reminded people of Monty Python and the Holy Grail. How they showed the passage of time around Ashildr at the end, and especially how she was smiling at first, and then towards the end she was very sad and crying. As we saw all that time passing, it reflected the fact that the doctor said immortality is more of a curse than a blessing. The villain was defeated by trickery and not by actual warfare. That's actually something that I did like because it reminded me of very old Doctor Who, where a lot of the times violence was not the answer, but they outwitted their adversaries. Some people loved the yakety sax. Some people hated the yakety sax. And, of course, this is part one of a two-part story, so there are a lot of people who are like, well, wait, what did this mean? And what does that mean? And, well, we'll just have to wait because it's coming up in part two.
Oh, don't leave out the callback to Fires of Pompeii, another big thing that people are talking about today.
Well, most people liked that, though.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of what we expected it was.
I expected and hoped for an episode. I'm still hoping for an entire episode about that.
Yeah, well, you know, I have to espouse a theory here, and that is that I think this could have been the season opener before Jenna Coleman's contract was renewed. They could have opted for a much lighter season opener, and they could have been introducing the new character, the new companion, Ashildr. What do you think?
I think her potential for a companion is definitely there. The next episode is going to be all about her, all about the consequences of her immortality. I think, as Lewis said, that this episode we got a bit of the onus of providing us a reason for the doctor's face looking the way it is. The production team has now provided that, but I think that we're still owed an episode, and that the return to Pompeii is inevitable.
Yeah,
and maybe what the doctor was trying to remind himself was that there's someone that's left behind that he still has to save in Pompeii. I have a crazy theory. Amy Pond didn't immediately return to Rory. Amy Pond was sent further back than we know. Amy Pond was sent to Pompeii. And so River shows up and says, we've got to do something about my mom, and sends him off on an errand. That's my crazy theory. Okay. It's
not as crazy as my crazy theory, but that's pretty good. Oh, by the way, apparently Brian Blessed was supposed to be fake Odin.
Oh,
but
nice.
He fell ill just before production, and so
God, what a loss!
So they cast this guy. However, when you look at it in that light, you can see that this guy was kind of doing a Brian Blessed impression. So that was kind of fun to see that.
No, I think I do like your theory of possibly this could have been the season opener prior to Jenna Coleman contract renewal. I secretly hoped that when it said The Girl Who Died, wishful thinking, but
you're a lot of people.
Yeah, I think, she's a great actress. She's had a good run, but I think how many ways can Clara be brought back and saved from the brink? And we're going to send her away. Oh, wait, no, we're actually not. And I kind of like having someone who isn't from today be the companion.
Yeah. Clara continues to be really smug, and that's a real turnoff for a lot of people. And on the other hand, a lot of her fans say, but on the other hand, this is a strong female character, and we like strong female characters in Doctor Who. I think we can have strong female characters that are written better. That's just my opinion.
Well, there's strong and then there's headstrong. It's not like she's got a death wish, but it's almost like she's charging into danger and defying the universe to do something about her.
She is an adrenaline junkie. I mean, they established that at the end of last season. In some ways, the story was better than the execution. It might have been better without the series arc wedged in. If this had just been a one-off story without all of the reflecting back on Pompeii and Clara Doctor interaction.
Right.
I mean, because remember, this is the first episode we've seen in this series where Clara didn't have to badger the Doctor into doing what was right. It came to him from elsewhere.
Yeah.
So that kind
Yeah.
of made me think, I wonder if this was written with her in mind as the companion, or whether this was something that was written prior to her renewal, and it got rewritten, and that's why it's got 2 writers.
Maybe you're right. You're right. It'd be worth looking up. I mean, after all, one of those writers was Stephen Moffat himself, and it makes me think that he took a pass over that script and dropped in, his zingers as well as the plot arc stuff.
Yeah. Well, there were a few things that were kind of deceptive. There was one point where they were coming up on the feast, and the music came up, and we both said, montage! It's time for a montage! And we didn't get the montage, but what we got was actually something funnier, which was they picked up the real swords, and then we immediately cut to the village on fire. Which makes me think this is a much lighter-hearted episode than a lot of people are trying to make it.
We're time travelers. We tread softly. It's okay to make ripples, but not tidal waves.
You are a tidal wave.
People are complaining about the fact that Vikings didn't really have horns on their helmets and all this kind of stuff. And
And where did the eels come from? Well, they're Vikings. Okay,
yeah, Vikings were in Norway, or at least in England, at a certain
Scandinavian.
point. Right? Do they have electric eels in Scandinavia-ish?
Not
kind
really.
of. Yeah,
I looked it
In
up.
my mind.
The electric
Never.
eels come from Brazil, so it's pretty far-fetched. But I think it's really tough to ask for historical accuracy from a modern-day Doctor Who historical. They just don't provide it. It's just not the goal of the show anymore.
Well, they don't really do historicals in the tradition of Doctor Who, because when I saw this, I thought, oh, cool, we're going to get an historical, and it was aliens. It's always aliens.
Oh, of course.
Well, lately it does feel like it's always aliens. There's always that, or some, like the ghosts, for example.
Yeah.
Once again, aliens. Like I was like, ooh, a ghost story. That might be something kind of neat and different. Not that.
Even the Doctor saw that same potential, but nope.
And it was aliens.
Too much time travel, it happens.
What happens?
People talk about premonition as if it's something strange. It's not. It's just remembering in the wrong direction.
I did like the little throwback in the beginning. Once they've made that 2-day trek, the Doctor tries to pass himself off as Odin and says that he's very cross. And it reminded me of Barbara Wright assuming the role of the Ataxa in the Aztecs. So that was a little bit of a historical throwback to me. Probably the only one that got that. But
I was waiting for him to do a callback to the demons. I was waiting for him to say, "Do you not recognize the great wizard Queequeg?" But he went with God, not wizard, so a little upgrade there.
But I think it's interesting because you've had, Roman mythology, you've had these other Victorian England. It's I guess they're trying to broaden their horizons a little bit, and that's why they went with the Viking, so to speak. But at the same time, you have this rich Norse mythology that I think they could have gone deeper into rather than just Odin.
Yeah, they didn't touch on that at all. As a matter of fact, I was really surprised that, knowing how the Vikings were, at least we don't know a whole lot about them, but what we do know of them is that they were very structured. They had certain ways of doing things. And I was really surprised that even after what they did, that they would allow the Doctor to just walk in on their funeral rites and try to work some magic. I would have thought at least one person that was another problem that people were complaining about, the fact that the Vikings in the village had kind of a hive mind. They weren't really independent thinkers, and not a single person there said, wait, this is a sacred rite, and even you cannot interrupt this. That would have made for a great character-building moment where the Doctor explains himself, and he says, no, I can do this, I need to, because this is what's right. That would have been nice to throw a little dialogue in there, but it just didn't happen. I don't think they had the time.
they didn't really even have their own names. They were like Chuckles and Lofty,
right?
And Limpy. Their characters were basically two-dimensional. ZZ Top. They served a purpose of taking direction, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, and the other purpose of making people laugh. It was all it really was light family entertainment, and it's a pity that we can't get more out of a historical episode. I really wish they would aspire a little bit higher than that.
I think this next episode is going to be in stark contrast to that.
I hope
it's almost
so.
like this is the levity before it gets really dark, and we find out really, hopefully, more insight into who Maisie really is. Is Maisie strictly a female analog of a fixed point like Captain Jack, or is she? That's how she starts, but then she's going to go on a tangent and be something dramatically different, and maybe she's a historical character from the Doctor's past that he just created.
I agree with you that the next one's probably going to be a little bit dark, because I think we got a little bit of foreshadowing in that. Remember when He Speaks Baby was just like a one-off joke? And this time it was a really major development. I mean, he got very poetic in his interpretation of what the baby was feeling. And the look on his face was very serious. So that was a lot of the not-so-light moments of the episode. So that was interesting. I mean, people were talking about the fact that the newborn baby had this enormous and poetic vocabulary, but I think that was the doctor interpreting. That was not actually what the baby was saying.
Well, but I think, like y'all said before, too, I mean, he's eventually going to have to face his quote-unquote immortality, his ability to regenerate. His companions aren't always going to be there. And I think I asked you while we were watching, like, wait a second, can't he just go back and see them at a different point in time? But once he officially gets rid of them, it's over.
Yeah, that never happens for some reason.
Yeah, and there was another thing. It was like some people were saying, well, why did he have to use the chip from inside the Meyer soldier's helmet? Why couldn't he just slip off a little bit more of that regeneration energy? He seems to have so much of that these days, but that might have been a little too convenient.
But I'm glad the sonic sunglasses broke. Bring back the sonic screwdriver.
They're coming back. They're coming back. They're going to fix the glasses. Remember, they worked even when they were broken.
I know.
So the next time trailer shows a return of those sonic sunglasses, but there's a missed opportunity. What I wanted to see is you repair them
With the sonic screwdriver.
With the sonic screwdriver. But wrap a little gauze tape around the middle. Come on, people.
Oh, there you go.
They went willingly to Valhalla, as would we all.
I wouldn't. Well, I wouldn't.
By the way, I have a crazy theory, and that is that they have just remade the character of the Rani.
Ooh.
Ashildr is going to watch people die around her for millennia, and after she figures out that she's immortal, she's going to die and come back to life a few times, just like Captain Jack did. She's going to know she can't die. She's going to study death, and it's going to turn into an obsession. She's going to turn into a monster. She's going to be a killing machine like the Rani was, all in the name of science. You know, she's going to say this is all in the name of scientific progress. So death is going to be like a science experiment.
Yeah.
And she'll have living, conscious beings as her subjects. She'll be so powerful that she and the Doctor will come to a stalemate. She will leave Earth in the far future. She will wreak havoc throughout the universe. Hundreds of thousands of years later, the arc will conclude at the end of the season with a combination of a little bit of Trial of a Time Lord and a little bit of the War Games. The Time Lords can stop her, but only in the far future when they've emerged from their slow time envelope or whatever it is that they're in. By then, the damage she's caused is just enormous. So they send out a signal and recall the TARDIS from whenever they are. The TARDIS is a conscious living being. We know that. And so the TARDIS is going to answer the call. It's going to bring the Doctor and Clara to the trial. And the Doctor knows he made a mistake. He's not going to speak in his own defense. Clara will give a big moving speech because she's good at that. And then it's going to be like they did with the two companions at the end of the second Doctor's tenure. They're going to say, we have to wipe her memory and put her back. We're going to force you into regeneration. You're going to be in exile. And Tom Baker plays the Valyard. I'm calling it right now.
Oh, wow.
Because he said he wanted to come back to Doctor Who, but only as a villain.
Nice.
So there we go. We just have to wait, 8 more episodes?
How about a twist on that theory?
Go for it.
That's actually happening right now. And all these holograms in these episodes are clues that this is actually happening inside the Matrix.
You've been hoping for that since last season, Paul.
Yeah, you've been doing a Matrix thing for a long time.
I don't think it's going to happen at this point. On
a more lighthearted note, my favorite line that I'm going to paraphrase is, I'm not really the police. That's just what it says on the box.
Yeah,
yes.
That was good. And did you notice also that what saved them in this episode was a story?
Yeah.
And in the very first episode, he said, I'm just a man in a box telling stories. That could be something else that is becoming an arc in this episode, is the story. The story is important. Just like in that episode, that two-parter episode with Martha and the 10th Doctor, where he disappeared and they had to keep the story going, the story of the Doctor. They might be reusing the story motif, but in a different way than they did in that episode. Because this is the second time when a story has been mentioned, it was a lot more important this time.
Well, and I think, too, though, just for kids who are watching from home and the power of their imagination and the fact that there was such faith in what her story would be and that it would broadcast and create this magical dragon or violent dragon that comes out and defeats them. I think it was nice to have that kind of sweet moment of being like, your mind is a powerful thing. Use it.
Yeah, and for the kids in the audience, the power of imagination.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Because that's something that children have in abundance. Sometimes it can be a little distracting, but other times it can be a really cool thing. And the fact that your imagination can save you is kind of a cool lesson.
I looked them up in my 2,000-year diary.
Okay.
They are called the Maya. They're
Listen.
one of the deadliest warrior races in the entire galaxy.
Okay.
But they're practical. They get what they want and then they go. You persuaded them to go, didn't you? I knew that you would.
The deadliest warrior race in the galaxy.
One of them, yes. Why?
Because I think this village just declared war on them.
I'm kind of surprised that Clara didn't get really upset when the doctor gave Ashildr the second chip. Clara is so important to the doctor, remember?
Right.
She's the most important thing ever. Why didn't he give her the immortality?
Yeah.
She could be his companion forever.
No, I got the vibe. I mean, Jenna Coleman for the emoting, but I got the feeling of, hey, dude, why didn't you give me that? I mean, that might have just been me, but I was sitting there going, oh, she's pissed.
Well, she generally is these days.
Yeah, well.
It's up to us to figure out why.
But that's got to be hurtful. This, you have traveled, you've been through all of these trials and tribulations with the doctor, and this one girl who did one thing is given the object, and you kind of just sit there like, well, you had two. Hey.
Yeah.
But it's more important for her to have someone to be with, which I thought that was telling of the doctor to do.
Are we assuming here that Clara doesn't end up getting the chip? We don't know who's going to get the chip. We're assuming it's going to be some mate, some. We have no idea. I mean, the
Could be a mate.
Clara.
It could be a mate. Remember, they keep hinting at Clara's bisexuality.
You're right.
Do we know Ashildr's sexual preference?
No.
No?
I think you're reaching.
She and Clara could end up hooking up sometime in the future.
Nope.
Or in the past.
Lovely.
I think, if anything, the chances of her ending up with Captain Jack are greater.
You're Lofty. You're Daphne. You're Noggin the Nog. ZZ Top. And you're, Heidi.
Did anybody else have a problem with spacefaring super advanced villains who couldn't synthesize adrenaline and testosterone?
Yeah.
That was a little much.
We've been able to do that for a while, and we don't have faster than light travel here on Earth.
Well, I made you pause the screen and say, wait a second, testosterone?
Yeah, exactly.
Of the things they needed, I just felt like that was a little...
Yeah,
It's really hard to take that at face value,
Hey guys, I'm going to puree you so I can have some testosterone to drink. Awesome. Cool. Thanks.
It's just a very one-dimensional baddie, I mean...
Which is a shame, because it was a really colorful villain, and I'd like to see him back again. But they didn't give him any story. We don't really have a good motivation for them to be doing what they're doing.
No, in fact, it's almost funny to me that they didn't just bring back the Sycorax or something like that, where you've already got these warlords that like to subjugate their victims with fear and, et cetera, a very, very one-dimensional kids show villain.
That's kind of the same problem we had with the villain last week.
Yeah.
Which was, it was a great-looking villain whom we knew almost nothing about. I mean, at least this time we got a little bit of information from the doctor.
Right.
It just wasn't really a one-dimensional character. Perhaps a two-dimensional villain. But it would have been nice to know a little bit more about them, because then we'd really want to see them back.
Yeah.
The armor, the design was really cool.
Oh, yeah. The design was beautiful.
Odin looked really good with his holographic,
Oh, and the creatures underneath the helmets looked great, too.
Yeah.
But at the same time, their leader reminded me of, and I'm dating myself here, reminded me of the kind of stereotypical character that Sid Haig used to play on the old live-action Filmation shows on Saturday morning. Yeah. Just an evil character with one eye. I mean, it's... or the Pirate Planet captain. Just very one-dimensional.
Odin had one eye. He gave one eye as a sacrifice.
Oh.
That's like part of the story of Odin. I can't remember what he sacrificed it for, but
a lot of their motifs I think they use this time around are things that are very familiar feeling. I mean, you have Odin who kind of comes down and is saying his piece as a god. And yes, he kind of looks like a pirate or whatever, aside from being a Viking. You have the villagers who, oh man, we're the ones who are left behind. We're weak and we're going to have to defend the village and we're going to train. We're not going to do well with training. But at the end of the day, we're going to figure it out and we're going to get there. And you have that spark where, oh my gosh, we figured out how to make this work. And so those motifs were very familiar and on the one hand comforting. And on the other hand, I could see where you'd want them to go a little bit deeper or develop it a little bit more.
You've made an impact there.
Stop it.
Oh, she's nice. Fight you for her.
The human race. We're obsessed.
I forgot that this was part one of a two-part story.
Yeah. It was very self-contained.
We had a full story. We had the introduction of the characters, we had the villain, we had the defeat, we had the resolution, and then suddenly it wasn't a resolution. And I was reminded, oh yeah, it's another two-part story. That I really liked. I really liked the pacing of this episode.
So the only continuity really between these two is
Isildur.
Isildur. That's
Yeah.
it. So
It's her story.
technically it's a two-parter. It's to be continued. The other one will be totally self-contained.
Yeah, and was this episode written just to introduce her character? I think it's probably safe to say that it was, but it's still a good story.
Or rewritten to introduce her character.
Right.
So the thing that Capaldi's having to face is that his season that he just did had a lot of rewrites.
Because of Matt Smith's departure.
Right. And now it's looking like this season has had at least a few rewrites because of Jenna Coleman not departing.
Right.
So
But I feel like he's finally coming into his own to an extent. I think he's still figuring out what type of doctor he is, but whereas last season, Farrar can tell you how many times I was screaming at the television set and frustrated. This time, the issues I'm having are not so much with him as a character anymore. It's more so I can tell what he's having to work with and face, and
Yeah.
a lot of that anger has been redirected at Clara. So I don't think he's taking himself so seriously as an actor. And I think that's okay. He's letting himself play more and not play for the sake of acting, but play for the sense of you have this amazing opportunity to play this character that millions of people around the world love and adore and that has been around in a variety of incarnations. And it's your chance to make it your own. Savor that, enjoy that, and have one hell of a ride because
Yeah.
it's going to go by in a blink.
And he really is, not only putting his own mark on it with the rock and roll touches, but also all the callbacks to the previous Doctors that he grew up watching. And I really appreciate it every time he pulls a bit of a Tom Baker impression, or in this episode, even a William Hartnell moment toward the beginning.
When the raiding parties go out, I make up stories about their battles.
Because if you make up the right story, then you think it'll keep them safe, and they'll all come home. That's okay. You're not the first person to ever have done that.
What were the emotional stakes of this episode for Clara and the Doctor? What happened to their characters in this episode? I honestly couldn't think of very much, which makes me think that this, like you say, was something that Jamie Matheson had written, and not necessarily with Clara in it. And then Stephen Moffat came through and did the rewrite. Because from the beginning of the episode to the end of the episode, the Doctor has learned something. The Doctor has changed. Clara is pretty much exactly the same, I think, as she was at the end of the previous episode, which is almost a waste because if you have a season with only 13 episodes in it, you really want to have something happening with each character in every episode.
See, but I think the seed of doubt has been placed in her mind that wasn't there before.
The doubt concerning her relationship with the Doctor, the doubt of her importance to the Doctor, the doubt of kind of what am I doing? This isn't going to last forever.
That's a really good point because the whole season's been building on that, right? The confrontation with Missy, where Missy put Clara in her place and called her basically a pet, the stuff with Davros. It's been quite a nice build. I wonder if she's going to have a crisis of conscience. It'd be interesting to see her character pushed up to that brink.
True, and if there is something that we've seen in the last 3 episodes, it is that they're emphasizing the Doctor's alienness in the way that he is superior to humanity. He is most definitely not human. He operates on a level above and outside of our sphere, and he's not ashamed of it.
You think they're all idiots, don't you?
What do you mean, the rest of the universe? Basically, yes, I do.
But they're kind and brave and strong, and I love them.
Good. But that won't save you.
Coming up, by the way, we have 2 new writers this season. Catherine Tregenna, next episode, and Sarah Dollard for episode 10. I don't know who these writers are, but hopefully they can both bring a bit of their own strengths to the show. And likewise, Peter Harness is back for 2 episodes. The only episode he's done was Kill the Moon from last season.
All right, redemption coming up, I hope.
So yeah, let's hope that his episode
And 2
is better.
female writers, huh?
Yes.
Yay!
That's a real change because there's been a real dearth of female writers for the show.
Yeah, and a dearth of females on the production staff as
Right.
well. So yeah, that'll be good.
There's an important role for them in Doctor Who besides being companions.
That's right.
Come on.
And besides telling the Doctor, if you love me, you'll do this. That's weird. But that was a previous episode.
What trickery is this?
Says the man with a fake face. But you see, that's the trouble with viewing reality through technology. It's all too easy to feed in a new reality.
You got it. Great.
A story to save a town.
Really enjoy the way the episode started. Starting the episode with action in the middle or the very end of a previous adventure makes you just want to know what happened in that adventure. That's a great opportunity for them to go fill in the blanks, perhaps with a future Big Finish audio drama.
We can find out how that spider got in the spacesuit.
Yes.
I did like the fact that the Doctor had to go wipe his boot off in the grass after crushing the spider.
My wife and I were very amused by the fact that they didn't even show the spider.
Nope.
They got a lot of drama out of it, and they never showed it at all.
Oh, very, very old school technique.
Brilliant.
Yep, really well done.
It won't stop. The repair kit I put inside the shield not over. It'll just keep fixing her.
Well, good.
I'm not sure, but it's entirely possible she has lost the ability to die.
Looking forward to seeing Ashildr as a highway woman. Mm-hmm. And the fact that it looks like the Doctor and her are both going off after the same prize.
I think I'm looking forward to see how they expand her storyline. I'm holding out hope that she is not just with us for one more episode, whether she becomes a companion, a villain, something that gets called back to every once in a while. I think she's a very interesting character, and I would like to see them flesh that out more.
Yeah, a lot of people were saying that Maisie Williams is much better than the material she was given. I haven't seen her in anything before, so I don't know, but I know that she was in Game of Thrones and very successful at that. So it's going to be nice to see her character fleshed out a little more in the second half.
Yeah, I agree with Farrar. I think if she does become an antagonist, it'd be an interesting kind of character to haunt the Doctor with. You know, he made her what she is today.
Immortality isn't living forever. That's not what it feels like. Immortality is everybody else dying.
Parting thoughts?
What I'd love to see an upset. I'd love to see the upset be that we won't have it, but an exit of Clara, and Ashildr comes on board. We know too much as fans of the series. It's all laid out before us. We get notifications 2 years ahead, but when a Doctor is going to be coming on board.
Well, this is why I don't read any of the news.
Yes.
That's what I'm for.
The only uncertainty has been whether or not Jenna Coleman is going to exit. So if she would exit mid-season, that would be bit of an upset.
Yeah, it would. What if Ashildr replaces her? That would be interesting.
But the replacement may take longer. It still could be an end-of-season replacement.
Yeah.
That's when you step away from Ashildr for a bit, but you can always come back to her.
I wonder if Ashildr works with the Zygons in a future episode.
Ooh.
We know they're coming.
You mean the 1 week after next?
If you say so.
Spoilers.
All right, thanks, guys. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.